You might have to X off on the announcements over there, but before it gets right. Oh, me. All right. So, what an exciting morning. Oh, that was a service and a half right there. I don't even know if I need to preach. I think a lot of preaching's already been done. I'm trying to think how to start this thing. It really started with Dad doing he was doing the devotion at the, well, it didn't start there, it confirmed there, but he was doing the devotion he had Monday morning. I guess that's been a couple of weeks ago, and he came out of simple Isaiah 40 verse that says, "They that wait upon the Lord, he will renew their strength." And I started dwelling on the word wait. They that wait upon the Lord, and it's the Spirit spoke to me. It's the word wait is basically to give place to God, to give place, to walk in that, to give place is a little bit different than what most of us think of when we hear wait. We think of a waiting room, or waiting for somebody else to tell us to do something, or we're going to go here, or something like that. And if you're like me, we're going to bring something to keep us occupied or entertained as that goes on, you know. Fortunately, in this generation, they have phones, you know. Our poor parents, when we used to have to sit in the waiting room at the hospital, imagine what they had to go through with us because we didn't have a cell phone with all kind of games and videos on it. They had to sit there and we had to entertain ourselves. I think we probably read Time magazine or Life. We probably learned something. Instead, now we just have a game in front of us, right? So Dad says, "They that wait upon the Lord." There's one of the first verses he came out of that morning. I don't know if I heard anything else he said. Sorry, Dad. I wasn't trying to ignore you. It's just it was like the Spirit just woke me up and said, "They that wait, they that give place." Are you willing to give place? And so upon that, I had been reading some other verses, and I'm going to try not to skip around too much. Chad, you don't have to go here yet, but in a little bit we're going to go to Luke, and we're going to carry through there. But I want to read just a set of verses, or I'm going to read in the middle of a verse. I'm going to pick up in the middle of a verse, and then I'm going to go back to some original text. And I'm sorry if I'm confusing y'all. It's about as confusing as watching us try to organize baptisms and altar time. We do a pretty good job of not looking like anybody else. I don't know if y'all have noticed that. We create a different picture here at the dwelling place. And I'm in the middle. I love it. Sometimes it drives me crazy. You get upstairs and try to follow it, it's like, man. I'm going to tell you, I was looking at Chad, is 10:17, no, I think it was Maya up there, it's 10:17, David is giving you some scripture, and we are realizing that we haven't even made it to a baptism yet. Okay, it's like he's preaching, he's not preaching today, but he's preaching, we haven't started one song, and the baptism thing hasn't even gone on, and I'm sitting there like, man, we are in trouble today. But anyway, we do a great job of not looking like anything else you've ever seen. So, in saying that, I am going to try to give you a different point of view of a scripture that is very common to you, and hopefully you haven't done like me over years and just thought it out your own way and not realized what it actually was coming out of. And this is not our main text, but this is an important text. And so I'm going to pick this halfway up. You'll know where it's from later on. It says, "For everyone to whom much is given, from him much will be required, and to whom much has been committed, of him they will ask the more." Seems like that's sort of a business mindset. Like when you get a manager, all of a sudden the manager has more duties than he had before. They just keep throwing more stuff on top of you. Or who much has been given, more has been required. In other words, if I'm going to trust you to carry this much money, if you're the church treasurer and you're going to handle the money, well then I'm going to require more of you than I'm going to require of everybody else because you're handling money. Okay, this is not a fleshly verse. This is a spiritual verse about your heart and where it is in your relationship with God. See, and that's where God began to speak to me out of that, and then I'm going to go to our original text, my original, something simple. I'm going to try not to skip around the Bible too much today, but I do want to let you know. Here, before I go to that, I want to ask y'all a question. Have y'all ever tried to operate out of lack? Sound interesting? In sports, it's very easy to tell who's operating out of lack. You know when they used to line you up in school and they were going to pick teams, and I was about this tall, and the person beside me was about this tall, and I couldn't run fast, and he could run fast, and then you get the taller, the big one, and all of a sudden you get to the end of the picking, and you're the last one. See what I'm saying? You can tell easily, fleshly, what you lack. Another thing is an art. Cole, you're going to love this. There's one day I never forget about my son's school, high school. He comes in, he says, Dad, you have to see this picture. Okay, first of all, Eric, my oldest, there's not a day in his life in school that he did not draw something. He drew on his papers, stuff he turned in would have a little something he drew out to the side. Cole, there's not a day that I can remember that he ever drew something except for this day. He came in and he said, Dad, you've got to see this picture. And I'm like, what in the world? I said, he goes, I got to take art. They're requiring me to take art. I start laughing right then. I'm like, oh, this is bad. You know, because me and Cole, we're not artists. There's nothing artsy about us. So Cole, because he says, no, he said, they made me draw my hand. I said, well, that's not bad. All you got to do is put it down on a piece of paper and just draw that. He goes, no, they wanted a side view of it. And so he's laughing already, and he's laughing, and I'm sitting here, and I look at this, and it's not a picture of anybody's hand. I'm laughing, he's laughing. It's easy to tell when somebody's not an artist. I go and tell you, I've started watching these little reels, and it's got the couples painting each other. Y'all, if you have not watched those, it's couples night date, and they look at each other, and they paint each other, and it is one of the funniest things you'll ever see, because most of the time, the women's look good, and the man's is just like, what in the world? Do you honestly see her this way? If you do, there's no way, you know, I can't imagine what the women think. But anyway, so we operate, have you ever tried to operate out of lack? Okay, so that's my question to you today. Have you ever tried to operate out of lack? I'm going to tell you my testimony from Friday. God will cover you in your nonsense. God will cover you when you're not where you need to be. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to struggle in pain. I'm in Jackson, Tennessee, which I go to at least once a week. I've left the office, and I have an appointment in Alamo to go see a customer. And I decided to go get lunch before I'm going to go to Alamo, which is about 20 miles down the road. As I normally do in Jackson, I'm not about to stop at McDonald's, Sonic, Hardee's, Pizza Hut, anything, Taco Bell. You can hang it up. I am not stopping there because I can get that in Hornwald. So I decided to go to Fazoli's. I probably haven't been to Fazoli's in months. It's just something different. Don't know why I went there. Now I do know why I went there. You're about to know why I went there. I'm sitting in the drive-thru at the window. They hand me my food. I put it in drive, and I go to hit the gas, and I notice my battery light's on, my brake light's on. I can't hardly steer, and I'm like, what in the world just happened? Okay, Bobby goes into panic mode. Bobby's not a mechanic. Bobby goes into panic mode. My car is messed up, but I don't know what to do. It's starting to get hot. I think. There's an AutoZone right there. So much that it's funny that later on in the day, my buddy came and helped me. His son, he was calling his son, say, hey, bring a pry bar. His son goes, there's an AutoZone on Van Drive? He's lived there his whole life. Didn't know that there's I was an eighth of a mile from AutoZone where I just coasted in with my car right there in front of the AutoZone. Now, I didn't have a single tool on me. My serpentine belt's gone, and there's radiator fluid everywhere. And I'm sitting here thinking, my first thoughts are, what do I do now? I call my brother-in-law. So my first go-to is my brother-in-law. He's free. He doesn't try to tell me too much, and most of the time he's just assuring me, yeah, that's probably it. You'll probably be okay. Okay, bro-law is a good comfort when I have car trouble. Doesn't mean he's going to fix it. Just means that his words are going to comfort me and let me know everything's going to be okay. All right? So I sit there, and in my panic, I go through, and he goes through the things with me. And so I'll replace the serpentine belt, but because I did not have tools, and the way they make cars in Japan, even back in 2011, you can't just fit any tool in there to get to the idler pulley. I mean, to the, anyway. Don't need to tell you all that. I'm sitting there operating out of lack. There was no preparation. I have a tool. I know I put a ratchet set in Cole's car. I've got jumper cables and a ratchet set in Maya's car. Tanya's I don't. She's always pretty close to home, and hers is the newest car. You see what I'm saying? In my truck, there's tools and everything. But in that Nissan Altima, that day I operated out of lack. I didn't have nothing. I was at the mercy of AutoZone, and then hours later, my buddy Van came and brought some tools. And what should have been about a half-hour job took me 3.5 hours. And then I stopped twice on the way here, filling up the radiator, recycling water and stuff with it. And I made it home. You know, I thought about, hey, by the time I call somebody, they'll get out here, you know, and I'm like, that'll just drive me nuts sitting here waiting on somebody to come here. I'll work on it anyway. I might as well just fix it. By the time somebody gets from Hohenwald and me get back home, I might as well just try to fix it. Long story short, Bobby wasn't prepared. So I want to read these scriptures from 1 Samuel, and this is in 1 Samuel chapter 7. And I'm going to pick it up just 1 through 3, but really we're concentrated on 3. Then the men of Kirjath Jearim came up and took the ark of the Lord and brought it to the house of Abinadab on the hill, and consecrated Eleazar his son to keep the ark of the Lord. So it was that the ark remained in Kirjath Jearim a long time, and it was there 20 years, and all the house of Israel lamented after the Lord. I want y'all to notice what we're doing is we're picking up the children of Israel have been captive. It's a common thing. They've disobeyed God. They're in captivity. And the Philistines have not only them, but they have the ark. But I want you to concentrate on verse 3 here. And I'm going to try to be quick. I know we got a late start, but or not a late start, but you know what I mean. Had a lot going on. And then verse 3, then Samuel spoke to all the house of Israel, saying, if you return to the Lord with all your hearts, then put away the foreign gods and the Ashtoreths from among you, and prepare your hearts for the Lord, and serve him only. He will deliver you from the hand of the Philistines. I'm going to leave it on that verse for just a second, Bro Law, because I want y'all to notice 4 things out of this verse. Verse 3, if you will return is number 1. Y'all pretty good on returning to God? I know I have. I can name you different times in my life where my heart returned to what God wanted me to do. It's a pretty common thing. You'll tell people, hey, were you once saved and now you've gone off and you've walked a life in sin and now you've turned back? You know, have you returned to God? That was one of the things that Samuel was saying over Israel at this time. He says, if you put away the idols, what captivates you, if you'll put away the idols of what's holding you, if you put away what is going on in your life, and he says, and then he makes a third requirement, which is what I'm gonna sort of focus on today. He says, if you will prepare your hearts for the Lord, okay? And then if you will serve the Lord only. How many times have you skipped the prepared part? I know in my life I've skipped a lot of preparing. And it's just one of the things that I know when I need to turn back to God. It's easy. I feel the conviction of the Spirit, and I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. I need to turn back to God. I need to repent right here. I'm pretty good. Matter of fact, I'm real good about that. Putting away other idols, things that are captivating me, God usually shows me what's carrying me away from my time with him. You know, I remember one of those, I think my father-in-law helped me with that when he said he used to love hunting. And him and Debbie, they would hunt together all the time. And he said, but it was taking place of where I needed to be with God. And I'm thinking, hunting's not a sin. As long as you got a license, you're good with the state. There's no law broken there. No, what it was is God was showing him that something in his life was carrying him away from his time with God. And I think over my time, I've been pretty good. Over my life, I've been pretty good about seeing things that were carrying me away. But I've never really noticed this point until about 3 weeks ago, that what are you doing to prepare for God? I know the Bible verse that says that he prepares a place for us, right? We all point that to heaven. You can take the verse down now, Chad. We all point to heaven, that he's got a place prepared for us. But what is a place prepared for us? I thought about that, and I thought deep, and I said, you know what? I said, does God just go build a blank room for my life in eternity? Am I going to walk in and have to pick out what color I want on the bed? What color the shades are? Am I picking out the paint on the walls? Am I picking out flooring? I mean, when you think he goes and prepares a room for you, it says in the Bible that my Father has many rooms in his mansion, and there I will prepare a place for you. Do you not think that that is just the same thing as David saying we are loved uniquely, as he is preparing uniquely for who you are in him, for your life in eternity? But what do we do as far as preparing for God in our lives? Where is our heart in our preparation in life on a daily basis? And so I named this sermon, Where's the Host? Where is the host? Luke, I'm going to jump over to 12, Luke 12, and I'm going to sort of line up some scriptures here. Luke 12 is where I was originally at. Okay? Luke 12, when I came for you, that first half verse, if you look in Luke 12:48, the last half of that verse says, for everyone to whom much is given, from him much will be required, and who has been committed, they will ask for more. That's where that verse from, but if you jump back to Luke 12, and we're going to start in verse 31. It says, but seek the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added to you. Do not fear, little flock. This is verse 32. Do not fear, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell what you have and give alms. Provide yourselves money bags which do not grow old, a treasure that is in heaven does not fail, where no thief approaches nor moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Okay? Very common verses, but if you look at the rich young ruler, what does he tell the rich young ruler to do? He tells him to give away everything. If you look in verse 33, sell what you have and give alms. Provide yourselves. Verses 31 and 32 are telling you to return. Verses 33 is telling you to put away. The same scriptures that you're looking in the Old Testament, when he says return to your hearts, he says put away your idols. Verse 33 is the put away of that. And in verse 34, the scriptures we're about to start looking at is the preparation. Because what I noticed is that he went quickly into the return, and he went quickly into put away everything. In other words, the rich young ruler, he says, there's one thing that you lack to see what I have for you. There's one thing that you lack. It's put away everything and prepare your heart. Matter of fact, and prepare your heart for what I have for you. And I'm sorry, my mind went blank because I was trying to look at that verse. I was going to skip over to the rich young ruler, but I don't want to take time looking it up. But he says, put away and prepare. The one thing you lack is that you're not willing to put away so that you may prepare room for what I have for you in your life. And if there's, I have to give my buddy Dave a little bit of credit. Preparation, when we go out on Saturdays, it's fun, but I go and tell you, I know Dave a whole lot more closer, not through my time with him on Saturdays, but I know him from his time that he posts on Team Reach app, which is our journey group, at 3 o'clock in the morning, where he's posting scripture. See, Dave, by the time we get to 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, his day's prepared for him. But not only is it prepared for him, he's prepared his heart for this day. And if you want to look in our vision, and it says for the community that we are given to, what you're giving in your heart to God is what you're going to be able to give to your community. This community that we're given to, that comes out of preparation in your heart. So I'm going to pick up in verse 34. I'm going to start again in verse 34 and run down these scriptures, and we'll read a few, and then I'll make a couple references. But preparation for where your treasure, y'all remember, there's I know they put little titles in here, but there's no separation in what the words are spoken. I guarantee, at mine it says, verse 35 above it says, the faithful servant and the evil servant. It puts a separation between verses 34 and 35, and I'm like, yeah, that's just something the man interpreted there. It says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Let your waist be girded and your lamps burning. And you yourselves be like men who wait for their master when he will return from the wedding, that when he comes and knocks, they may be open to him immediately. Verse 34 is a prepare verse. In verse 35 it says, gird yourself, guard, prepare your life that you may be protected, and keep your lamps burning. Always be ready. You see, the very next thing he says after return, and it says after take away everything, the very next thing he says is prepare your hearts for the Lord. It's what Samuel's saying in 1 Samuel 7 there is, y'all, we need to prepare our hearts. This is more than just to turn back and say, okay, God, I acknowledge you. He's talking to the children of Israel. He's talking to the nation of Israel. Samuel's talking to Israel that says, he's prophesying saying, if you will do this, this is then what it's going to be restored. And he lists out 4 things, and for some reason we want to skip number 3 because it puts something on our lives that we don't want to deal with. It's the preparation of a place for God to be able to operate in our lives. Verse 35 says, gird your waist, put a gird on. In other words, prepare protection. And it says, and keep your lamps burning. You don't want to let your lamps unlight. You don't want to not be able to see. I don't know about you. You ever had a flashlight go out in the dark when you're in the middle of the woods? It's not fun. I did it as a kid in Royal Rangers. We were having a competition, okay? And it was capture the flag, and we did it at night. Royal Rangers is like a Boy Scouts group, okay, except it was for the assemblies. We weren't in the assemblies then, but we thought we were, so we were close enough. So our church did Royal Rangers. So we're running a capture the flag between us and some other troops. And back then, you didn't have these little pin light AA batteries that could run and flash a mile. You know, if you had a flashlight, there wasn't nothing you put on your head, you know, unless you was a coal miner, you didn't have a headlamp. Okay, when I was a kid, you had a flashlight that was bigger than this microphone that used 2 or 3 like D-sized batteries that if you took them out, you could kill something if you threw at it. You know, so this is a heavy flashlight, and you're sitting there and you're running through the woods, and all of a sudden there's no light. Needless to say, I was scratched up just a little bit because that tree branch or whatever caught me that I didn't see coming because I couldn't stop it enough time when the light went out. Yeah, that didn't feel too good. Always keep your lamps burning. And if you look at what the world wants you to do, they want to pretend that there is a light on the other side of this relationship with God. And they want to shed what is actually darkness into what's supposed to be lit into your heart where you're supposed to be preparing a place for him. See, when I ask you where the host is, most people will start going, matter of fact, David went straight to, oh, you're going to talk about armies. No, I want to talk about somebody that is willing to take in the presence of God and prepare a place for them. If you think about this, this is what woke me up to this too. My wife, Cole's about to graduate college. Okay? What a great moment. For some reason, that school put it on at 6 o'clock on a Saturday night. Okay? Well, our little sweet family in Sweet Town here, that's an hour and a half away, and how do you prepare for that? Because you're going to have to be there early. But we want to have a big party for Cole because everybody loves Cole because he seems to be likable for some reason. I never saw it, but, you know, apparently y'all have. I'm just kidding, I have. He knows I love him. Me and he'll spend more time. You know, those lunches are great. But if you think about it, so preparation started for a Friday night event. Cole told me a few months ago, he said, I want a crawfish boil. Okay. That's what you're going to get. We're going to celebrate you. But do you realize that in that time, before that Friday night, when I don't know how many people were there, I can't tell you numbers. I know the driveway was full on each side of the driveway with cars. And but for all those people, the preparation, That started weeks before then. It started with a phone call to a guy who can handle crawfish. It started to my wife waking up one morning and said, we're going to have company here, and we need to start cleaning. It went to my wife saying, we've used a room for storage for Eric forever, thinking they'd have more room when they moved in the house. It's been piled up. You open up the door, you can't walk in there. We need room. Preparation began. Matter of fact, Tanya was even amazed. She said, I can't believe I got that room cleaned up, somebody sleep in, or, straightened up. Do you see the preparation that was made for that time? It started way before the event was about to happen. It started back when we realized that Cole was about to graduate, but and we knew that we were going to have to do things differently to be able to to carry this out. Now, in our lives, in our daily walk, we can't do this without God. And most of you are going to agree with me right there. But are you making preparation in your life and in your heart where he has a place to come? Because see, I was so glad the other day, Jonathan, your message Wednesday night was such a blessing to me, because if y'all didn't listen to that, it talked about the slave. The teaching was about the slave mentality that we carry and the orphan mentality we carry. And he came out of the story of the prodigal son. It's a very common spoken word that's used. It's preached all over. But when I look at that, if you look at the father. I was so glad you came out of that, because I knew what I was preaching on today. If you look at the father in that message, do you realize that the robe, the ring, and the shoes were already there? Do you realize that the son, when he was far off, the father was prepared to receive him? Folks, we have a father that loves us. And in that son's heart, he had determined that he was no better than a slave or an orphan. And Jonathan brought that out beautifully. But what I'm talking about is when the ring and the robe and the shoes were placed on that young man. Do you not realize that was the position, the authority, and the acceptance of a father? Those three things right there, if you look at that, that is the heart of Jesus Christ and what he wants to do in your life. But if you look at that story from our side of view, the father was sitting there waiting for that young man to come. He did not go send servants and say, I need you to go to the store and get the finest robe. The finest robe was sitting in the house already. He didn't go and say, I need you to go get a pair of shoes. I need you to go down to a trader and see if you can find a pair of shoes. He said, go in the house and get the shoes. He said, my signature, my power, my authority that I want you to walk in, that I want you to carry as an heir, as a son of God. He says the ringlet, he said, sit there. That ringlet was sitting in the house waiting for his signature, for his son to carry that power and that authority over that family. And he was sitting there waiting and watching far off. And I've done jumped. David, I'm getting like you. I just jumped around pretty good. I'm going to go back. Look, 12. Blessed are the servants in whom the master, when he comes, will find watching. You see how that lines up with your word, Jonathan? The father right there, sitting there. Blessed are the servants whom the master, when he comes, will find watching. That father was watching the whole time, waiting for his son. He was waiting for his son to return to the house. Blessed is a servant who is sitting there watching, waiting for his master to come home. It's a preparation in our hearts, folks. It's a place that we give to him where he can operate on a daily basis. And for so many of us, between David, I remember many times you being up at 5 o'clock in the morning reading the word, between Dave's scriptures that come across on Team Reach that I have to keep my phone on silent or turn notifications off so I don't wake up the family in the middle of the night. 3:40, most people aren't just getting up like, oh yeah, this sounds good, I'll send it to all the guys, so Dave is. But if you look at that, his heart is prepared before the day has even come. He has made room He is prepared. He has spent time, just like Tanya did for Cole's graduation party. He has made a place to where we can come and receive. And we are to make a place to where he can come and work. See, a host in the science world, a host is something that can carry another organism, parasite, whatever it may be. It can come and it can carry that, it can live off of it. And they actually study out two types of bacteria. One, I can't remember the name, but basically one's designed that if they try to operate together, one is going to destroy the other. But in the other, if they both they describe it, they describe it as eating off the same table. That's the way they reference it. If these two eat off the same table, one is going to destroy the other. But in this other kind, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to go dig up the words. I've got them on my phone, but there's no reason to. Plus, I left my phone up there. I realize that. But the other one, if they eat off at the same table, they both are built up. And when God says, draw unto me and I will draw unto you, folks, that's our lives eating at the same table. That's the journey of coming to the table with Christ and saying, look, Lord, I know I've got a good Father. When we sing about the goodness of God, it's obvious how great he is. It's obvious that from far off he's willing to accept us, not only accept us, but fully restore us. If you go back to 1 Samuel in that chapter 7, it says, and after these things, I will restore you. I will deliver you from what the enemy has for you. That's what he told the children of Israel. Samuel told the children of Israel, if you'll return, if you'll put away what captures you, put away other gods, if you'll prepare and you'll serve only one God, I will deliver you from anything that the enemy has for you. In church, I want to walk delivered. But I go and tell you, just like Friday afternoon in the AutoZone parking lot, thinking that I ruined one of my favorite shirts, working on that stupid car with very limited tools, it was my own fault that I was operating out of lack. Does that make sense? Nobody didn't put a tool set in my vehicle. I had plenty of tools to do the job, just a serpentine belt. Really all it is a 14 millimeter wrench. Unfortunately, you have to have the curved end and it has to be small enough to fit between the fender well and that. Yeah, so I mean, it's one of those designs, but don't get me wrong. Really, it's a 14 millimeter wrench and a pry bar to help you bring over the belt. And 3 hours later, I'm still trying to use somewhat of what they call a wrench. And I don't have a pry bar. I'm waiting for an extra set of hands. And you think about that, and you think about that in your daily life. Did you wake up this morning and everything right? If it wasn't, did you wake up this morning and prepare your heart? I go and tell you, I saw a lot of hearts open up on this altar this morning. That's a great thing. That's a move of the presence of God. But is he going to be able to move in your heart tomorrow? Are you going to make a place for him? Or are we going to continue to operate in lack? And so the reason I called this, Where's the Host? I'm about to tell y'all a funny story, but then it's going to be, and this is, Mama, I know you're watching, which I think you'll be on about a 30-second delay, but it's okay. You'll think you're live stream, but when I was a teenager, my parents forced me to move to North Mississippi. It's horrible, horrible, horrible. Moving from there, from Vicksburg. Just kidding. Forced me to move to Mississippi, and I took it out on them. And every chance I got, I was a pretty good idiot. I mean, I was better than what I am now. I mean, I was a moron. I'll go and tell y'all. And I decided to throw a 3-day party because my parents went up to Kentucky to go see my grandparents. Matter of fact, this is one of the times that I truly regret. Me and Mom talked about it just not too long ago. So I told them that I didn't want to go to Kentucky and see my grandparents. Fortunately, I would get to see them before they died after this happened, but we didn't go up there but once a year. So they left me back, and they left some neighbors sort of to keep eye on things, and they were an older couple, so it's not like they were up late and stuff. And so I just started having friends over, and what eventually became probably about, I don't know, 50, 60 person party about the people I had no idea who were there, because we hadn't been there long. Just about 4 months or so. We had lived in Boonville, or I'd been there, so I didn't know half the people. And I remember that I had left to carry somebody somewhere. I don't even know why we left. I left my own house to a whole bunch of teenagers. This nuts. Yeah. They didn't have cameras back then, you know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like nobody's getting notifications or anything. So anyway, I turned back in the street, and from both ends of me, I have blue lights, okay? So I get pulled over, and they say, "Is that your house?" And I said, "Yeah, that's my house." And they're like, "Well, we've arrested everybody we could in there." A couple people got away. I actually became friends with the person because I didn't snitch on them, because I honestly didn't know who they were, but they thought I did. But anyway, so, but I looked back when I was going through this, and I thought about who prepared for that moment. Where was the host of that event? The host was gone. What happened? Confusion, destruction. I'm sitting in jail. I get bailed out. My parents are leaving Kentucky, I don't know how many days early, to come back and take care of the mess that I created. And what I'm saying this for is folks, is when we don't prepare our hearts with God, and we keep letting that lack, I don't care how good of a person you are, you're headed for destruction. See, when I walk more days and days away from what God's intended for me, my life becomes a disaster. And I'll put it to you in reference. I'm going to skip down. This is still back in Luke 12. I'm going to skip down some verses because I started y'all off with a verse. And let me see where I want to pick this up. Let me pick this up in 45. But, don't let me mess this one up. Yeah, let me skip down to 45. It says, "But if that servant says in his heart, 'My master is delaying.'" Oh, no, let me go up. 43. Sorry, Brolaw. "Blessed is that servant whom his master will find so doing when he comes." In other words, watching and waiting and ready to open the door. "Blessed is that man, blessed is that servant. Truly I say to you that he will make him ruler over all that he has. But if that servant says in his heart, 'My master is delaying in his coming,' and he begins to beat the male and female servants, and to eat and to drink and be drunk, the master of the servant will come one day, on a day when he is not looking for him, in the hour and when he's not aware, and he will cut him in two and appoint him his portion with the unbelievers." Verses 45 and 46 look like me at that party. I know I grew up in church, but I didn't have a clue who God was. I never paid attention to my father. As long as I obeyed and did good in school and played with my friends, that's all I cared about. There was no heart turned towards God. Verse 47, and that servant who knew his master's will and did not prepare himself or do according to his will shall be beaten with many stripes. That's me when I left my family. When I turned away from my family, I knew God's will, but I didn't care. And so instead of preparing my life for what God's will was for it, I went on my own selfish reasons and I left. And it says you will receive many stripes. I think most of them I've given myself. The pain in my heart and what I caused and what I did there was a lot of hurt. But I go and tell you folks, it was out of a lack of preparation. Because I knew God's will We were in church. That whole time we were in church, we were in a great church. And God was speaking and God was moving. It was just like this morning. You would see people just pour their lives out on the altar. There was people with hurts and pains that would go, just let them go on the altar. And I sat there in a seat refusing to go for what God had prepared for me. And what did it do? It put me in a place where I would have to carry the pain instead of him carrying my pain. And it says, if you pick up the rest of that verse, and it says, the one who did not know will not receive many stripes. It says, but I want you to skip down to this. But 48 picks up, but he who did not know yet committed things deserving of the stripes shall be beaten with few. For everyone to whom which much is given, from him much will be required. And to whom much has been committed of him, they will ask for more. Do you see where who much has been given, much will be required now? It goes back to the servant that was prepared. It goes back to the servant that knows. And so, I hate to tell you, but sitting underneath David Grimes all these years, and the preachings that I heard, you do not have the excuse to say that I do not know and will not receive many stripes. What I call many stripes is you won't have to carry much pain. Unfortunately, in this house, that word has been broken. You know the will of the Lord. Now, are you willing to prepare your heart for it? Are you willing to carry the pain of not committing your heart to it? I can't tell you the amount of people I see in hurt. I can't tell you the amount of people I see in pain. I can tell you this, the world has tried to drug all of it. Dad will tell you, Marlon will tell you, anybody who's ever had any procedures, anybody that has any kind of diabetes, anybody that has any kind of illness or infirmity, you want to know what the world's trying to do? It's trying to bury it. You're not intended to carry that pain. Your life is not intended to be miserable. Your life is intended to be in the fullness of God. But if you're not willing to prepare your heart where God can operate into it, then what you're going to get is you're going to be like one of these servants that said, well, the master's not here, I'm going to do this. I understand the will of the master, but since he's not looking right now, I'm going to do my own thing in this. Are we going to be like the servant that is sitting there watching from far off, that as soon as that master knocks on the door, it's open? And this morning, I was fully prepared for an altar call. I'll go ahead and tell you. But God showed me the altar was already opened. And I believe this word is to carry your life off of this altar and let you know what tomorrow needs to be. It's easier for us to open up in a church service, but sometimes it's not as easy for us to open up Monday morning before we have to go face the job that we're not necessarily happy with, or the people that are necessarily against us, or the customer that's just, some of y'all know just like me, there's sometimes you're just waiting for the call. You know it's coming. They're going to have a problem with something. You've done something wrong. See? But in our lives, what tomorrow morning needs to be is a preparation for what God's got for you. And every day like that. And I thank God for him revealing stuff like this to me, because I go ahead and tell you, from my time as a youth in the party, in that ignorant situation, from the time of me almost destroying my family, almost destroying my life in that ignorant situation, and from my time for me right now and what I'm about to walk into and what he has for me, I thank God for words like this that lets me know, son, I know you've returned to me. I know you've put some things on the side, and I know you're willing to serve. But what I need to do is for you is to prepare your heart, because the many things that I want to give to you is going to require more out of you. And what I'm going to commit to you, I will also ask for more if you'll keep your heart on that altar. Lord, I thank you for this day. I thank you for the mighty things we've seen your hand do in this service. I thank you that we don't look normal and we don't look like just another church service. I thank you that we have testimony and celebrations of your love, of your healing, of your hope. I thank you for the expansion that's going on at Hope Hornwald. I thank you for the expansion that's going on in the hearts of the people in our community. I thank you for expanding your word, for your promises expanding, and Lord, that your word may be louder than it ever has been before. I thank you for this community. I thank you for the leaders that you have placed in it, and I thank you for your church and your body of Christ. I thank you for the other churches that are with us in this. Lord, I pray you bless them in their houses this morning and their services. Lord, I pray you bless the people that watch online, Lord, that can't be here. I pray that you're healing over them, you're strengthening them, and Lord, your word will just fall on them. And Lord, most of all, I pray that you help us. Lord, as we prepare our hearts, I pray you fill us full of your glory. Lord, in your mercy, that we may speak your word and be prepared for every situation. We give you all praise, honor, and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.